Chapter 11. The sky may be falling, but it's only a storm. As more people become aware that something just isn't quite right in the world, the police state has gone into overdrive to counteract this growing resistance to the status quo. We will be the first to admit that the growing police and surveillance states are only a piece of many serious issues that must be faced by our species. However, we see many reasons to feel optimistic about the future of humanity. The more aware the populace becomes, the more frantic the media, government, and corporate partners become. Their whole scam is dependent upon their control over the human consciousness, and that control is beginning to unravel. This is the equivalent to someone in a debate screaming ad hominem attacks when faced with an argument superior to their own. When a thief or a liar is exposed, you often see them act out in verbal or even physical aggression. It is not unusual for guilty parties to act outraged about accusations against them and then to paint the victim as a villain. This is exactly what has been playing out in the macrocosm of geopolitics as more and more people are becoming aware of their enslavement. As the leaders and authorities are exposed as illegitimate, the establishment is lashing out with all their might. History is full of societies and empires collapsing and rebuilding. If the people of today are willing to work together and cooperatively face adversity, they may be able to weather any potential storm and emerge stronger than before. There is no doubt that we are in the midst of a storm that has been raging for centuries, and the intensity of that storm is growing by the minute. We have every reason to make any and all preparations that we deem to be necessary, but we should not be consumed by fear to the point where we are considering violence or nihilism. The reason why there is so much fear surrounding the downfall of the state is because people have grown detached from their communities and have lost their ability to be self-sufficient. With that being the case, the first step towards overcoming that fear and preparing for the oncoming storm is to get more familiar with your community and start thinking about ways in which you can expand your skills and knowledge. Growing food, getting to know your neighbors, establishing community study groups, and learning about off-grid solutions are just a few ways to strengthen your family and your community as living standards continue to deteriorate. In our next book, we plan to elaborate on ideas for building off-the-grid community solutions. There seems to be a fascination with talking about the end of America or the end of the world. Some people believe everyone alive today would somehow forget all we have learned as a species and return to pre-industrial living conditions simply because the government and their fiat conditions fail, and their fiat currency failed. This is completely false and ignores the ingenuity of the human mind. While we are still dealing with the dictatorship of the state, we must remain vigilant and not become overwhelmed with what they throw at us. This is exactly what they are trying to provoke. The establishment wants us paralyzed with fear so they can prevent us from making any moves that might rock the boat. We cannot row the boat to safety without rocking it, so we must find the courage within ourselves to make waves instead of sitting around waiting for the boat to row itself or waiting for the deranged captain to rescue us. We can and must recognize the injustices taking place in our world today. We can and must identify the mechanisms and people behind these injustices. We must not be scared into thinking that the status quo is our only option, or that we are fighting a losing battle. Defeatist attitudes will prevent us from making any real progress. While we should remain aware of the dangers posed by the oppressors, we should not fear them. If we combine education with action and work to dismantle the lies, violence, and fear, we can regain control of our own lives and liberate ourselves from the matrix.